back to my channel. So today we're going to start on a new project. So this is kind of inspired by two separate artists. I saw AB Creative do a 3D flower on a canvas with the air dry clay, and the design is actually a little bit more inspired by my carving inspiration by Hannah Jensen. I love both of them. They're great artists. So this design I actually used in a previous carving. I'll link it up in the eye on top, and I'm going to show you how I transfer it to my board, because I'm going to place the pieces of clay onto here, but I need to know where they're going to go. And I'm going to mirror my designs. This is just non-grease parchment paper, and I used a normal pencil to copy my design on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it, and then I'm going to place it and put a piece of tape here, so it should be sticking to that side, and just a piece up here. Just want to keep it from moving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rounded hard thing, in this case it's the end of a makeup brush, and I'm just going to rub over my design, and that should put down a little bit of the graphite onto the canvas, and that way I'll be able to see my design on it. And I'm just pressing down. I'm sorry if you can hear my very Dutch accent. I am Dutch, so that's no surprise there. I just want to make sure you don't move your design while you're doing this. So as you can see, it's transferring onto the board, so I'm gonna just continue doing this. So I've got my design on my board, and it came out really nice. So what I want to do is I'm going to work in tiny pieces because it dries really fast. And I've got some PVA glue. This is the brand I use. And I've got some pure PVA, some watered down PVA, and I've got some water. But my idea was to use the watered down PVA to smooth it and hopefully make it stick to each other better. And then this PVA glue I'm going to put onto my board to make sure it's actually gonna stick to it. And I thought I needed to roll it, but the clay is actually so soft that I think I can just put it on. And I'm going to work from the inside out, so I need to find the one that's the lowest, probably this one. And I got here. I'm using a silicone tool because it's easier to clean. So I'm just putting on a tiny bit of the PVA glue. This clay does feel a little bit dry, so I might just incorporate a little bit of the water and glue mixture. Then I'm just going to rub a tiny little bit, and I think that's already too much. Like, really need a tiny bit because it's going to be the lowest. See, that's still way too much. I'm just going to try and shape it. This is going to take hours and hours, you already know, because I'm going to be moving the board, pushing it, clay around till I feel like it's the right shape, the right thickness, something like that. And then I go to the second little bit and just repeat. And you can use several different tools. And it doesn't need to perfectly follow the guide, but it's the easiest to get it the same, because then you know where your next piece is going. And when the clay gets too dry, make sure you're wet it again, otherwise it's not going to stick at all. So I've been at it for I think about an hour and a half, and I only gotten this far. So note to my future self, don't bite off more than you can chew. It does look really nice, but I want to let it dry and see if it actually is going to stick to the canvas before I put in a lot of work and it's not going to stay on. So I'm probably gonna come back to this tomorrow. So this has been drying for 2 days, and I just started to sand it down just to look if I can do it. So this is just a 180 grit, and it's looking really nice. It's really easy to sand, so that's a good thing. It's sticking on there really well. It's not going anywhere. I'm not gonna force the board to bend because then it's gonna break. But yeah, I think this is a really good idea to do. I'm gonna try and finish this piece in the next couple of days, and I'll show you when I'm ready to sand, and maybe I'll show you a little bit more how I put this down. But I don't have to be as precise because the sanding is really easy. So that's what I'm gonna do, and I'll just see you when it's done. So first you add a little bit of PVA glue to the area you want to work on. This is just to get a really nice adhesion to the canvas. So you don't need too much, just a little bit. Then you take your clay and you just take a really tiny amount. So I took about this much. and I roughly put it in the shape that I want it to go in. Then I start shaping it with a little bit of the water and PVA glue mixture. You don't need too much of that, just to get it a little bit moist. I just smooth it out on the edges, and you just work on it till you're happy with the shape. When it's dry, you can sand it, so it doesn't need to be perfect, but as I'm a perfectionist, I like it to be perfect. And the reason you don't want to make it too wet, because then it's going to become a little bit of a mess. And that part is done, so I'll just continue on the rest of the flower. So my piece is fully dry and all done, as you can see. Let me put on the light. So it really looks stunning 3D, mostly if you put it with a light on the side. Look how cool that looks. So what I want to do next, and this is optional, I'm a perfectionist and I like to make it a little bit smoother. I'm just gonna use a sanding bit on my nail drill, and I'm just going to smooth out some areas, and got a couple of these diamond bits if I want to make some grooves a little bit deeper. So I'm not gonna bore you with too much of this, but I'm just gonna switch it on. And I'm just going to, you can do this with a piece of sandpaper as well. So I think I'm gonna start with just a piece of sanding paper, because the nail drill is just too precise. What I'm gonna do is just, you can see where it's going light. So where it's light, it's touching. Where it's dark, it's not. So that's the way you can see if you have sanded it flat. Of course, you don't want to take away too much. So a little texture is okay. Got a little brush for the dust. So I'll just keep doing that for the whole piece. And then I'll put probably a coat of white on here just as a base, and then we'll go from there. So I know I said I was going to do a base coat of white. I'm actually going for a base coat of black. And so I know there's a technique in painting miniatures, and I think it's called the xylitol method of xylitol. If I'm mispronouncing it, just go watch some cool tabletop videos. They will explain it. Doing black first will make all the shadowy parts dark, and then I'm gonna do a highlight with white, and I think I'm going to dry brush it, and that would give me my highlights. And then if I'm doing it correctly, I should be able to put a color on top that's more transparent. So probably I want to do a red or a pinkish color, and that will actually turn out darker where it's dark underneath and lighter on the places where there are highlights. So that's in theory. I don't know if it's going to work, but at least we can try. So I'm going to do the black, let it dry, and then we'll be back for the white. So my black is dry, and now I'm going to dry brush it with some titanium white by Amsterdam, and just put a little bit of it on here. And I've got a little piece of paper towel here, and I'm going to be using a makeup brush. It's really soft, and that will help just give me the best dry brush effect. So I'm just going to dab it in the white like so. Then I'm going to go over a piece of paper, take a lot of that paint off, make it look like this. Then I'm just going to lightly start brushing over it like so, and I will just start to build it slowly. As you can see, my brush is actually quite wet, but I don't mind it giving off a little bit more white, because I really would like a lot of contrast in some areas, because when I'm going to go over with the color, it's just going to be lighter in those areas. And I'm also going to go over the board, because that will give me the texture of the canvas like so. So let's just finish this off, and we'll be back for some color. So many hours later, I taped off the flower. Hopefully I did a good enough job. It took a long time, and I'm going to use my little airbrush with some red paint, and I'm just going to try and airbrush one coat and see what it does. Hopefully it's gonna look good, and otherwise we're just going to try something else. I'm just gonna turn it on. I'm gonna spray on a piece of cardboard first, just to test out how the spray is. So that is looking just fine, so let's just do a very thin coat. I didn't think about how the red would turn pink on the white, but that's okay. It's going to be better once we get a couple of coats on. looks like it's working. It's not as bright as I wanted to, but I do like it. I'm just going to put in a little bit more color and do another coat. I might turn it over. As you can see, some areas are a little bit too wet. So what I'm going to do is use the air that comes out of the airbrush while you're not spraying to dry it, because the air just goes on. It's just the paint that gets added when you open up the valve. So that air can be used to dry the paint if you use a little bit too much. I'm just going to finish what's in the airbrush and I think I'm good. So that's all it's giving me. I really like it. It's not really showing up on camera as nice as it is. So I'm just gonna let this dry and then we'll take off the masking tape and see what we are going to do with the green and the rest of the piece. So we'll be back tomorrow, I think. I'm just going to use this sap green because it's transparent, doesn't have a lot of pigment. For a first layer of green, I could have gone for another airbrush layer, but I feel like I just don't want to go for any more tape. So I'm just going to do a really thin coat. And I was thinking about doing the permanent green deep on the leaves, but I kind of like this color. My neighbor's dog is going crazy downstairs. Doesn't matter which time of day I'm filming, there's always noise here, so I'm sorry about that. I'm still thinking about what I want to do with the background, because I had the idea of using some gold leaf on some gold pigments on some glue gun glue, but I'm really liking how it's looking right now, and I think adding more might actually not make it better, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to think about that once this is done, and otherwise this is going to be the final thing. So I decided I wanted to do the background darker. I didn't like it as light, and now I'm probably gonna do something I might regret, but I'm heating up my glue gun because I want to try something, and I'm going to use a plate as my first template, and I'm going to draw a circle. This is a white pencil and I'm going to use it really lightly. Nope, this is the wrong one. Hold on. So I'm going to use my white pencil and I'm going to do a really light line. So this is my baseline and I'm going to use that to put some circles of the hot glue. I don't want them to be too straight. I want them to be a little bit organic. And I want to put some here, probably a little bit here, maybe something closer together. Okay, I think I like that. My glue gun is hot and hopefully it's going to cooperate. I'm just going to add some glue, some thicker parts, some thinner parts. It doesn't need to be perfect. I want it to be a little bit organic. So I saw me paintings do something similar with the circles. And I thought it looked really cool. I haven't tried it before with metallic powder, and that should, if I'm correct, stick to the hot glue when it's dry. The only thing I think I need to do is take those little strands of the glue and take them off before I add the gold. I think otherwise it's probably gonna mess it up. And I really like how this piece is growing. I really thought it would just be a straight up easy going piece, and now it's just evolving into something totally different. I really love that it's giving me the opportunity to experiment with different techniques. So I'm almost done with the glue gun, and I'll just go and let it dry, and then I'll go and rub some powder on it. So I've got two colors of the gold. This is really warm and this is a cool tone, and I think I'm going for the really goldy gold one. So let's just put a little bit on here. Let's zoom you in. Got a tiny amount, and then I've got one of these eyeshadow applicators, the spongy ones, and I'm just going to put a little bit of the powder on here like so. And now we're just going to try and rub it on. Oh my god, it's working. Oh, that looks so cool. I'm hoping that I can brush it off the canvas and it will stay on here. Let me just close this before I make a mess. You don't want to breathe it in. It's really fine, so I'm wearing a thin mask. Let's do some more. It's like magic. And a little bit goes a really long way. And it's way less messy than the gilding paper that wants to just fly all over the place. I am going to add a top coat of varnish over this piece. Look, I've barely used any. You just rub it on. It's that easy. Let me show you. You see how easy it is? So I'll just finish this, some varnish on, and then we'll go to the final reveal. So here's the final piece and I'm really loving it. It really has a lot of different textures and I'm not sure if you can even see how 3D it actually looks. It really came out perfectly. So I want to thank you for watching and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye everyone!